Well, hello, I'm Christina Henderson, Executive Director of the Montana High Tech Business Alliance. Welcome to our webinar, Strategic Marketing with Dr. Jakki Mohr. This event is part of a series that the Alliance is hosting with resources to help our communities deal with the impacts of current events. You can find details of these sessions at mthightech.org/events. Our presenter today, Jakki Mohr, is Regents Professor of Marketing at the University of Montana College of Business. Before beginning her academic career, she worked in Silicon Valley for HP and achieved international acclaim as co-author of the book Marketing of High Technology Products and Innovations. She has won numerous teaching awards, including the 2018 Montana Educator of the Year, presented by the state of Montana. After Jakki's presentation, we will open the floor for Q&A with the audience. We would ask you to mute your microphones until you have something to say. And if you have a question or comment to share during the meeting, you can type it in the chat box or turn on your microphone to speak. Today's presentation will be recorded. And with that, I will turn the floor over now to Jakki Mohr to get us started.
Well, hello, everybody. It's nice to see some familiar names pop up on the webinar today. And the motivation for the webinar came because Christina presented to my high-tech marketing class last month. And during the course of presenting last month, she put up a slide that I'll share here that you'll see on the survey results for 2020 for the Montana High-Tech Business Alliance. The sixth most desired skill in their new hires was sales or marketing. And I contacted Christina after she gave the talk in my class, and I said, I could give a 1-hour webinar to help address that skill deficiency, and hopefully that would be useful. And so that was the origin of us putting on this webinar through the Montana High-Tech Business Alliance. So thank you, Christina, for inviting me. Today's agenda is going to be a quick overview of the 11 people who did fill out the Google form. I was joking with Christina earlier that I looked at that 2 days ago and then yesterday, and I thought we were going to have this intimate workshop of 11 people who filled out the form. And then she emailed me the list of participants and said, well, actually 75 people have signed up. And I thought, okay, that's not an intimate group anymore. So I'm psyched about the interest in marketing, and Christina and I have been talking a little bit about how to continue the conversation around marketing. After I overview what the participants filled out for their marketing needs for today, my focus that when you leave here is that your team, your company, should be able to understand that marketing exists at 3 levels in your organization, and all 3 of those levels have to be firing on all cylinders for marketing to be effective. And so the conclusion then will be putting those 3 levels together and then helping you build a blueprint or a template for how your company can continue your marketing journey. As Christina said, you can use the chat for questions that are coming up, and she'll be monitoring that for me. And then we will have time for Q&A at the end as well. Of the people who filled out the Google form when they registered for this webinar, what you'll see is that I've bolded some of the common marketing challenges that High-Tech Business Alliance member companies face. How to differentiate from competitors, how to quickly reach decision makers. Digital marketing is always at the top of the list. How to develop relationships. The word education, how to educate professionals, how to educate end users. Educate is another word for marketing communications. You use marketing communications to generate awareness and to educate. So we'll be talking about that. How do you gain brand recognition, which again is creating awareness, getting targeted messages to decision makers. You'll see a lot of commonality in the requests that companies had about how to address their marketing challenges. I won't go through all of these, but I wanted you to get a sense of there are strong commonalities across companies, even though their unique environments and their contexts are unique to them. we can still talk about high-tech marketing in a fairly generalizable fashion. So I think there will be something that's valuable to each company, regardless of which of these bullets might apply most to you. The Google Doc also asks people to identify what skills they wish their team had. So obviously marketing skills, and that can be broken down into, again, the digital marketing. We'll talk a little bit about SEO, search engine optimization, and content marketing today. I liked this one, wish your team had clairvoyance. That's an important one. I wish I had that too. Empathy, we're going to be talking about empathy. That's so critical to understanding and working with customers. Communication, communication, communication. That is what marketing is about. Sales skills. You'll notice that I'm not going to be talking explicitly about sales. I try to stay very much within my domain expertise, and sales oftentimes works in a complementary way with marketing, but it is its own beast entirely. Okay, so let's start with this whole idea of what does marketing mean? And it's a really confusing term because when people use the word marketing, we all assume that we know what the other person is talking about. But as you'll see, marketing is imbued with lots of different subcategories. So this was the word cloud that I found that I personally liked because it captures my ideas of marketing related to target markets, branding, strategy, promotion is part of that. But a lot of people, when they say the word marketing, they are meaning digital marketing and the use of the online tools that have really changed the way we think about marketing. Email marketing, blogs, videos, apps, that all falls under marketing, but it's a very kind of unique aspect of marketing. And then I always think in terms of customer relationship management as being one of the most important reasons we even have marketing. And that just invites a whole nother set of tools and strategies. And as I was talking to Christina about how complicated the marketing landscape is, it did lead to a conversation about continuing this webinar series beyond just a 1 hour kind of overview of how to build marketing competencies in your team. So as I mentioned, I'd like today, when you all leave the webinar, to be really clear that there are 3 levels of marketing decisions. And when you work in your companies on marketing, I think it's really important to clarify, are we talking about the strategic level of marketing, which is really the proactive decisions that the leadership in a company makes to chart the company's strategic efforts in the marketplace? And the primary strategic decisions that company leaders make are to hone in on what specific target markets are you going to focus your efforts around. And this is a very complicated process, to be honest with you, about how do you select a target market and how do you go through the process and what data do you need to inform that decision. And related to that, the strategic level also includes crafting a compelling value proposition. And that value proposition is going to depend on your target market selection. The target market selection and the value proposition are like hand in glove. You can't craft a value proposition without knowing which customers you're targeting and vice versa. And I'm going to give some examples of this a little bit later. The target market selection and the value proposition are also very much a function of how your company chooses to differentiate itself from the competitors. And so this idea of understanding competitors and understanding your company's strengths and weaknesses relative to competition takes us to the next level. So I just would like to pause here for a minute and let you know that I'm going to overview these 3 levels of marketing, but then the rest of the webinar is actually going to drill down on one decision at each level and give you a blueprint of how your company should go about making that decision. So I'm going to get to some specifics, although I'm starting right now with a general overview. The second level of marketing includes what is known as the functional aspects of marketing. And these functional aspects from an education perspective are sometimes referred to as the 4 Ps. And you'll see I have those 4 Ps listed on the right-hand column. So what product or service does your company choose to offer to the target market? That is a decision that needs to be made, and it oftentimes falls under product management, sometimes called product road mapping, technology road mapping. And so there's a whole process that companies should be using to develop that technology roadmap. That's another drill down that we could go through in a future webinar. How do you make decisions about pricing? One respondent said they really would like information. That's a marketing challenge for them, is pricing. I would be delighted to go through a webinar on that, but I'm not going to be talking about pricing today. It's kind of its own beast. Go-to-market strategies, sometimes referred to as distribution channel. What partners do you have in place to help make referrals for your company's products and services? What companies do you rely on to complement what you do? An example of this place strategy would be the Montana silversmiths that relies on primarily Western and sporting goods stores to carry very finely crafted silver jewelry, and it's displayed in display cases at places like Murdoch's or Bob Ward's. They distribute nationally. And they have a sales force that calls on those retailers, very traditional retailers, but in addition to that, they've decided to have an e-commerce channel. So place strategies are very important, and they often rely on partners. And then promotion is going to be the communication channels, and that will take us down to the tactical level. But before I talk about the tactical level of marketing, I'd like to also highlight that at the functional level of marketing, marketing is a function in an organization, just like you have accounting or finance or operations. And marketing has to be integrally involved in other business functions, because other business functions are involved in delivering the customer experience. And really, if the company is not, as I said before, firing on all cylinders in all of its operations and other functions, then the best marketing in the world isn't going to solve the problem. I'll give a simple example just from the University of Montana. As you know, we're always, marketing and advertising to have students come and visit campus and make decisions about where they want to go to college. And it's really important that if we as an institution are spending money advertising the University of Montana, knowing that that campus visit experience is a really important way college students make decisions about where to go to college. If our campus visit experience is not the epitome of a wonderful experience, then we should be really careful about how we're marketing to students. We have to make sure that campus visit experience is really the closer of the deal. And if it's not up to par with what our competitors are doing on campus visit experiences, then we can't say, oh, our marketing is bad, when it's something else entirely. So you need to have all of these functions working together. Now, most people, when they think about marketing, they often are referring to the tactical level, which is, what does my website say? How am I using search engine optimization to draw traffic to my website? What is my sales strategy? Your salespeople can be the best salespeople in the world, but if they don't have the right target market or the right product or the right value proposition for that product, they're not going to be successful. So sales is dependent on getting your strategy right and getting your product roadmap right. What trade shows are you going to go to? these are all very important marketing decisions, but they are really dependent on getting the prior levels above them optimized before you even go into this tactical level of marketing. So what you'll see on the right, I've kind of got my description and my examples a little backwards on my center column and my right-hand column. But the tactical aspects of marketing won't bear fruit. See, I've got a typo there, won't bear fruit without a clear target market and a compelling value proposition. So we'll be coming back to that. And underneath these layers of marketing is the importance of having data about your customers and having the idea of customer experience excellence as one of the shared values across your organization. It's a cultural value. And so those underpin these three levels. So just to reiterate that, two sides of the same coin here. If you don't have the proper target market and the value proposition, as well as your product and price that are optimized to deliver that value proposition, then all the tactical marketing in the world isn't going to work. Marketing can't dig you out of a strategic hole if the strategic decisions are wrong or haven't been made. And the flip side of that is kind of the same thing. If you spend a lot of money or even some money on these marketing tactics like digital marketing or sales, they're not going to yield the proper results if you don't have an effective target market, an effective value proposition, and a product and price that deliver on those. So these things really need to be synced up, and we'll be coming back to that. And again, the customer experience excellence, your company has to be optimized to deliver on these moments of truth. Every customer interaction gives you the opportunity to either cement your relationship with them or to not deliver on your value proposition. And that's not just the job of marketing, it's the job of sales, it's the job of billing, it's the job of customer service. Everybody plays a role in optimizing that moment of truth. All right, so let's talk at the strategic level. Just going to check my time here. Great. At the strategic level, I mentioned that it includes selecting a target market, crafting a value proposition, and understanding how to differentiate from competitors. So I've picked one of those three things to provide detail about so that when you leave this webinar, the teacher and me, I've actually have a homework assignment for you coming up about your company's value proposition. Okay, so what is a value proposition? This is a statement, and it's a statement that should capture the essence of why a customer should purchase your company's product or service. It's an elevator pitch of sorts. And this should be mapped onto the specific target market that you're going after. And it should capture a customer in that target market. What is the compelling reason to buy from your company? And the way that this should be answered for a technology company, okay, so this is unique to technology marketing, is how will the adoption or purchase of your company's technology either lower that customer's costs on a significant cost factor, so how are you going to save them money? Or how is the purchase or use of your firm's technology or services, technology services, consulting services, how is it going to increase the revenue for your customer? And as you will see, if you cannot demonstrate that your firm is actually going to save money or make money for your customers, you're going to have a really hard time, quote unquote, convincing them to buy. Marketing is not convincing people to do things. Marketing is creating value. And that value has to come in the form of making money or saving money. So for technology companies that are selling technologically oriented products and services, the asterisk up there says that your customers They experience uncertainty and doubt when they have to make purchase decisions. They're used to doing things the old way. They don't like change. They incur switching costs. There is risk about how they spend their own money. And because they have this uncertainty and doubt, it's a very different buying decision than when a customer is trying to decide what restaurant do I go to, or what beer do I buy at the store, or even what brand of car should I buy. And as a result, the traditional value propositions that we see a lot of consumer companies relying on, for example, what is called an all benefits value proposition, which is sometimes called whiter whites and brighter brights, just like toothpaste and laundry detergent. The all benefits value proposition, it lists the benefits that a customer will get. For example, it'll be faster, it'll be higher resolution, it'll be more reliable, it'll be more secure. Pick the attributes that you're using the adjective more than, what the customer currently has. And that list is generally not compelling to a technology customer, okay? And so the second type of value proposition is what's called a favorable point of difference, which means you recognize that your customer has other options. And those choices about how to meet their needs means that you might actually show your customer a total cost of ownership about buying your equipment compared to some other company's equipment. Microsoft relies on total cost of ownership quite a bit. And by contrasting your company's advantages relative to competition more explicitly, that's helpful. But for technology buyers, the strongest competitor oftentimes is status quo, where they stick with the current way of doing something. And this inertia to stick with the old technology or the incumbent technology or the in-house solution that you have rather than going to an outsourced provider, that is really difficult to unseat. And so if you have a value proposition that's crafted in one of these two ways, you're not setting your marketing up for success. So let me give some examples here about what makes a value proposition compelling. So you have to document the value that a customer is going to see, and it has to be documented quantitatively. And so this requires that you know your customers really well and you know what their costs are from something like lack of reliability or the cost of a lack of security. So you're going into monetizing those attributes. So you need to convey that you, as the vendor or provider of a product or service, understand that your role is to help your customer make money or save money. So let's go ahead and look at it. I've got 3 examples here for you. Here are some examples of technology companies. I'm not sure that the last one is actually a technology company, but hopefully you'll give me a little bit of grace on that one. If you're offering consulting services or technology services, this is an actual value proposition, and I've anonymized the company here, but I think some of you can relate to this. We helped our client reach $7 million in annual sales online. So they're helping a customer migrate their business online so that their guests can go offline even faster. So you can tell that this is a company sort of in the hospitality or a tourism industry, because what's the purpose of a hospitality company? It's to make sure that their guests are having great experiences, because a hospitality company doesn't have any business if they're not giving their clients a great experience. So this company really understands the customer's business, that the customer is trying to get online bookings and that they're trying to drive those customers to the company's website where they'll be able to get client testimonials and inquiries. So the idea here is signal to your customer that you get their business. And in marketing, sometimes marketing is called fluff and bluff. You can say, well, anybody can make up a number. Yep, anybody can make up a number. This is why you need to have your own website. So you're driving your customers to your own website where you have those client testimonials. You have case studies, you have the documentation, you have the white papers to show how does that actually happen? How do you make that magic happen? So Core is my next example, Core is a thermostat company, and they sell energy information systems to help big companies get more efficiency out of their energy, heating and cooling expenses. And by using their smart thermostats, their value proposition says, our thermostats will deliver a 20% savings on average for your heating and cooling costs. And again, you can put the little asterisk there if you would like on the 20% savings that says, go to our website to see the white paper, and hopefully you've partnered with somebody who's credible to help you document that value, because people want to have trust in what you're saying. And it could be customer testimonials, it could be use cases, there's lots of ways to get that data. And I like this one, Mercedes-Benz, because most small businesses, if they need a fleet or if they need some sort of a sprinter van for whatever they're doing, they think Mercedes-Benz is probably out of their price range. And so Mercedes-Benz actually advertises in Inc. magazine, Fast Company magazine, and they advertise their vans for business transportation, and they say, we'll give you 18% greater fuel efficiency and extended 20,000 mile service intervals to lower your maintenance costs. So they're showing the way to document the value here. And so your first homework assignment then is, I would like you to really take a hard look at your company's value proposition and ask yourself, is it explicit in how you communicate the value you bring to your customer's business? So I'm putting one of the people on the webinar here, Walker Milhone, who's starting an app called Livestock Simple Livestock. Walker?
Yeah. Simple Livestock.
Simple Livestock, and I've got it pulled up here if we have time later. And when he is brokering people who are bringing their cattle to market with buyers who want to buy cattle, which typically is a very labor-intensive process where you have to go to auctions or you have to somehow find a way to find the cattle. Walker knows a lot more about this than I do. And I suggested to him as he was building out his app that he could go after kind of the big herds who are trying to sell and buy lots of cattle, which would be one business model. Alternatively, he could go after kind of a more local movement where people want to know that they're buying local cattle who maybe have been raised in a sustainable way, and we might go farm to table with a slightly different business model, and that would be a different way to broker buyers and sellers of cattle. But the key thing that the cattle seller wants to know is, how is Walker going to squeeze out their costs of finding those buyers? And what the buyer wants to know is, how is Walker going to either help them find better quality cattle, depending on who the target market is, or how is Walker going to squeeze the costs out that they have to pay when they go to market to bid on those cattle? And so in order to do that, I put him in touch. I have your email pulled up today, Walker. I just heard back from Tyler. Tyler McGee started an app for farmers for labor. And his value proposition says, our app will save you costs and time in the labor that your farm requires, simply by tracking better who's doing what and when the work is done. And he has an artificial intelligence algorithm built in for weather, because a lot of the tasks that are done on a farm are weather dependent, and they lose a lot of time and labor expenses when people are idle because of bad weather. So it's going to help them, in theory, schedule that to drive down the cost of doing business. So they're trying to work right now with an agricultural university to actually document that savings so that the value proposition is really compelling. All right, so what resources do you need to provide the credible evidence of your value proposition? And this requires that you understand your competitors' value propositions. You do not operate in a vacuum. And Walker could say, well, there are no other livestock apps like this. I have no competition, which I know Walker wouldn't say that because he's not naive and he knows that the old way of doing it is his competition. And that is a stronger form of competition to unseat than having another app that he could say, well, we're, the whiter whites, better, faster, cheaper than the other app. Your competitors are the old way of doing things. And unless you really understand your customer's commitment to that old way of doing things, it's a lifestyle, it's a culture. Those things are critically important when we talk about heritage in an industry like that. So that's going to be pretty difficult to unseat, I would imagine. But like I said, I don't know the business. I'm just speculating about it. All right, so that was our drill down on value propositions. Moving along. The functional aspect of marketing, I had built a whole set of slides on how to use data to build out your product roadmap. And I realized I was being way too ambitious in a 1-hour webinar. So I moved all of these slides to the very end of my slide deck. And I said to Christina, if there's an appetite after today's webinar to do a product roadmap using data, I've just cut and pasted that set of slides to the end of my slide deck. And they're there, but I'm not going to sprint through them without adding meaningful value. So the one thing I'd like to say about the functional aspect of marketing, I don't know if you all have heard of the marketunist, who is he's kind of like Dilbert for marketers. And he probably wouldn't like me describing him that way. I'm not sure if that's a good brand or not. Remember that this functional area includes everybody in the company agreeing that they have an important role in delivering customer excellence. Because even if you don't think you're customer facing, odds are you actually are serving somebody who is serving somebody who's customer facing. So there should be this direct line of sight to the customer. So how can we be more customer centric? Well, I'd like to help, but I'm not in marketing. I'm not either. Yeah, good luck with that. So this is like the kiss of death for a marketing philosophy in a company if you think just the person wearing the marketing hat is doing marketing, because customer excellence is everybody's job. Okay, now on to the tactical aspects of marketing. So I've got tactical on the left-hand bar there. And when I talk about tactical marketing, in most high-tech companies, we refer to it as MarCom, marketing communication, advertising, digital marketing, websites, all of the things that most people think of when they say marketing. And again, I can't emphasize enough that if you don't have the strategic and functional aspects optimized, tactical marketing is not going to be effective for you. You're going to wonder why it's not. And you're going to blame, your digital marketing person, but you've got to get the strategy and the function right first. So the new framework, relatively new, I'd say this is maybe 4 years old, is we refer to marketing communications in 3 buckets. Owned media. Owned media means your company's website and your own social media channels, your YouTube, your Facebook, your LinkedIn. Okay, so those are your owned channels. Earned channels refer to publicity and public relations. Earned media are things other people say about you. So when you are written up in an industry publication, that is invaluable for credibility. And that doesn't happen by accident. That requires a strategy. And typically we would have historically called that public relations. And then we have paid media. Paid media has always included traditional radio ads, TV ads, newspaper ads, but now it includes all kinds of search engine marketing, digital marketing tools, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads. And so this is like a huge domain to kind of talk about. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to have just a couple slides on owned media. I'm going to have a couple slides on paid media. And then if we want to do drill downs on tactical marketing, there are people on this webinar like Austin Walker who know way more about digital marketing than I do. I'm kind of more of a marketing strategist in the high-tech area. But I always feel like to be a credible marketing expert, you have to know enough about this important aspect of marketing because it's what most people associate marketing with. Okay, you cannot engage in this marketing communication space without mapping your customer journey. Because every touch point that your company engages in, whether it's PR, public relations, paid media, radio, TV, print, search engine optimization, social media, you can kind of follow this. Each of these touch points, whether they're in the physical realm or in the digital realm, have to play a specific role in your customer's journey. So if we map the customer journey for a non-high-tech product, well, anymore education is becoming a high-tech product, we'd have to start way back in middle school when students are just starting some of their summer camps on college campuses where they go for gifted and talented programs or a robotics competition or a poetry creative writing workshop in the summer, or even a sports camp. So our customer journey would have to start way back in middle school. It would have to talk about how do they find out about those camps, what's their experience, what's the on-campus experience like, what are the dorms like, what's the food like, everything. So mapping your customer journey is really important. And your customer journey in tech should really reflect the length of your sales cycle. So for B2B products, these can be years-long customer journeys. For B2C, it might be a little bit shorter. And for business to government, that continues to be a little bit of a mystery for me. And there are people that I can put you in touch with who really understand that business to government space much better than I do. So in mapping your customer journey, you should ask 3 key questions. How are or how will customers discover your brand? And you might not know the answer to that, so you can certainly ask your current customers, how did you hear about us? That's really important to know. How do your customers do research on what to purchase? So if they're trying to make a decision about moving to the cloud, some of their sourcing, or moving to a collaborative teaming environment with Slack or Google Meets or Microsoft Teams, how do they do that research? And what are the barriers that they face as they try to get information and make that decision? What are kind of the gaps in that journey? And then you should be mapping your own company's processes onto each of those touch points that customers are using as they gather information. Maybe they're attending a webinar, maybe they're reading industry trade publications, maybe they're asking friends, maybe they're using LinkedIn. And then you need to know who in your company is managing each of those touch points and how do the handoffs between touch points work. So this is really complicated stuff. But again, I'm going to get to this at the end. If you say, oh, we need some search engine marketing and search engine optimization, if you don't have your customer journey with an idea of what's happening, you won't know what your call to action should be for each of those touch points, because each one should have a call to action. So this is the funnel that Luminad uses for their clients. Luminad is one of the Montana High-Tech Business Alliance members, and they teach a course for us in the business school on digital marketing. And they say we have to start all of these journeys with creating awareness. Then we need to engage and deliver information. And then we need to convert those people into being paid customers for our clients. That's what we need to do. And there are all kinds of marketing funnels. And so you need to pick a funnel that works for your company, and you need to have conversations in your company about who's responsible for which aspects of the funnel, because they all need to work together. And so when you plan for this marketing communications aspect, remember you have to know who you're targeting, what your value proposition is, know who in your company is going to deliver on that value. You have to have objectives for your advertising. And I don't want to make it seem like, oh my God, this is like, overly complicated. It's a proficiency. It is like a muscle. You exercise it and it starts to become very familiar and known to you. And the idea is, when you engage in marketing communication, you always have to know, how are you going to evaluate the return on your own spending on that? Because just like your customers have fear and uncertainty and doubt about should they invest with you, your companies have fear, uncertainty, and doubt about should we even be spending on marketing? How am I going to gauge the return from that? I'm going to be spending this money. What am I going to get back from that money? And you should know how you're going to measure that. And I'm going to come to this in a minute before you spend that money, because you don't want to, your resources are too precious to just gamble on. Okay, so let me check my time here. We're right at 4:40. So I'm going to make some quick triage decisions. I'm going to focus on content marketing. Content marketing for your owned media is how you develop your own voice, your blogs, your webinars, your white papers, and your case studies. Content marketing is the way to get earned media, and it's the way to drive potential customers to your channels. And so when I think about what is useful content, I like to look at examples from marketing companies, because marketing companies have to eat their own dog food, so to speak. And so if you look at Luminad and Tadpole, two really great digital marketing companies in our state, Tadpole's in Bozeman, Luminad is here in Missoula, they both have a resources link. And that resources link gives anybody who's interested in digital marketing a whole tutorial on how to do digital marketing. They're just opening their book so that you can learn what do you need to know to be a smart, informed client. And then if you choose to hire them, so much the better, because you'll understand what you're getting into. So for you as a high-tech company, the equivalent would be, what is your equivalent of resources that you're sharing to inform your customers about how to be better healthcare professionals, how to be better veterinarians, how to be better real estate agents? And oftentimes it has nothing to do with what you're actually selling. What you're trying to do is tell them in a very credible way, I get your business. I get the challenge you face. I get what you're up against. I will be a trusted, credible resource for you. And the key thing on content marketing is you are not trying to advertise your product's features. You're trying to do what Christine is doing right now, which is say, hey, if you're in the High Tech Business Alliance, we get your pain point around marketing. We're going to give you a service around that. I hope that makes sense. Happy to talk more if it doesn't. SEO is its own thing. Got some detail here. Oh my gosh. You guys, I'm just going to have to go to the conclusion, because obviously, even despite cutting back, my eyes are always bigger than my stomach. It is a classic problem in every domain of my life. Okay, let's put all the pieces together. So you've got the strategic level. Who's your target market? Which I've got a little asterisk there. Email me for a guide on this if you would like more information, because I didn't talk about how do you even do that. Did a little bit of work on value proposition. Those are both strategic. Tactical is this marketing communications, creating awareness through paid, earned, and owned media. And then the functional is, how have you optimized your product roadmap and your price and the customer experience? So when I talk about marketing, this is the vision that I have in my head. And to me, all these pieces work really seamlessly together, and that is key to building your competency in your companies. I'll let you read this on your own. It's kind of this idea of coalescing around marketing as a shared value in your company. And so what you can see is that marketing is really complicated and it's hard work and it has to be integrated across your operations. And marketing is not your opinion. Marketing is really, I like to set it up as everything is a hypothesis. And I don't know your business, but I can tell you how to get the data to determine whether your marketing strategy is going to be a good idea or not. And I've been heavily influenced in my approach to viewing everything as a hypothesis that needs data to support it or not by reading the Lean Startup. So I really recommend people are familiar with the Lean Startup. It's not a marketing book per se, but I think it's quite valuable. And so for the next steps in your marketing journey, I just have a whole bunch of ideas here. If it was my company, what are some things I would do? And I think to have it as a shared cultural value in your organization, having a weekly brown bag where people just can drop in. Seth Godin has this 3 circles of marketing that I think it's just like a 1-page little primer, and it would be just a lovely discussion point for your company. And try to map your customer journey and this idea of empathy. There's something called a customer empathy map that if you want to do empathy maps in a future webinar, I love doing empathy maps. I do them with my data science students, and it's like they totally say, oh, now I realize why data science is so hard for people who don't know data science, because they built a customer empathy map. I always like doing a mystery call or a mystery inquiry when I'm working with companies on a consulting basis. I'll either call their 800 number or I'll hit their website. And I try to just see what your customer experience is like by calling and asking a question. Have a book club. So these are just some ideas that I have. But importantly, your leader team should be asking, how does that strategy address our customer needs? Everything in a company should be focusing on delivering customer value. And if people don't know how something addresses customer needs, then ask, what customer data do we have to figure that out? And a lot of marketing is based on just getting the data to help build confidence in the decision. Okay, Q&A time. I see we've got a few chats. And I'm going to stop screen share and I'm really excited to see who's on and what resonates with you all. Oh, there's Wes Spiker. He knows way more about this than I do. So Wes, I'd be curious what you think about this quick overview.
Oh, I think Wes's mic is off.
You're still on mute, Wes.
Well, we did have, so Jackie, we had I think a request in your opening where you highlighted the topics that folks shared that they were interested in hearing about today. Skander said, getting targeted messages to decision makers. Please double down on that. Decision makers removed from frontline experience or data. Do you want to maybe hit on that again, Jackie? What are some ways that folks can get those messages to decision makers?
Yes, that sounds great. So Skander, maybe you can help me out here when you say getting targeted messages to decision makers. I'm assuming you mean getting your company's messages to the decision makers in your prospective customers' businesses. Is that right? Because the decision makers often aren't the ones who are the ones that you're talking to. The decision makers control the purse strings or the budgets, right?
Yeah, almost always. Thanks for the opportunity to jump in.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think often I talk to people who are really excited about what the services and products that we have to offer, but they are not the people that really hire us or get to decide whether we get hired. And so I tend to think of part of marketing is getting people excited about what you do. And that comes pretty naturally to me, but that doesn't always translate into the folks saying, all right, we're gonna pay a premium to work with you because we are excited about what you do or whatever.
Yep.
And so it's usually got to weave through a couple of layers and trying to build maybe a more pervasive excitement. If
Yeah.
marketing is building excitement about what you're offering, then I think I have a challenge to build very pervasive excitement.
Yeah, typically when we're talking about complicated buying decisions, there's the language in business to business marketing is there's a buying center, and that buying center includes gatekeepers and influencers, and oftentimes there are people who are removed from the ones who would actually be doing the work with you. And so how do you reach those gatekeepers and influencers to instill the same level of influence with them? And oftentimes that's really difficult because they don't want to meet with you and they're focused on other things. And so I get back to this idea of a value proposition, and maybe it's a little overly simplistic, but until you can really show those influencers and gatekeepers and other people how your company is going to make money or save money, that truly is what it boils down to. And so I'll just give an example. As you know, I'm doing some work in the area of sustainable accounting and sustainable business strategies, and it's really tough to get to a CFO when you're talking about sustainable strategies. But it becomes a CFO issue when you can show how the cost savings are going to affect the bottom line when a firm does, quote unquote, the right thing, that it's not sidetracked in a sustainability nice to have department, that it actually affects the bottom line. So we could talk sometime, Skandra, if you wanted to, a little bit about how to make that translation, because it has to be translated into the language of what those gatekeepers are concerned about. And oftentimes it's a very different set of concerns than your frontline people.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, other folks, feel free to type in the chat. Jackie, one question that I saw came in later, might have been, I don't know if it was after you had a chance to look, but we have a company that was thinking about rebranding in 2021. Do you have advice for companies that maybe are thinking, how can we reinvent or reinvigorate our marketing strategy in the new year? What advice would you offer them?
Yeah, so the whole idea of branding is really important. And I think that, and I think there was one person who said they were really interested in branding. And again, I have a module on branding, but rebranding is important if your company is actually going to change the way that it engages with customers. So a brand is way more than a logo or an image or a slogan or something like this. So a rebrand has to be manifest in the products you offer, the way your company operates, and what you're doing. So I think from my perspective, the rebrand should really be based on a solid understanding of what were the old problems that you're moving away from, and how does a rebrand actually solve that problem? Because sometimes the rebrand is actually solving a symptom of the problem, but unless you get to the root cause of why you need a rebrand in the first place, the rebrand itself won't solve it. So without having a little more information, I'm reluctant to give kind of an overly simplistic answer, because I really worry that people will mistakenly think that marketing can solve a problem that actually the root cause may be something very different than a branding issue.
And that may be a question that as we consider doing some follow-up webinars, we might be able to drill down more into specifics for some of you that have, significant marketing overhauls in your horizons.
Yeah, and I have to say that to me, a brand is really what customers think of you, and a brand is how customers perceive you. And I'll just give an example that everybody knows. Google has been working quite hard to move aggressively into cloud services. They're quite far behind Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft Azure and some of their cloud offerings are doing a good job. But Google said our brand is actually a hindrance because we want to move into kind of more traditional big companies that Microsoft and Amazon Web Services have served for years, but we're known as a cutting edge company and an innovative company and an imaginative company. And that brand is not aligned with some of the more established businesses that we would like to be a credible provider for. And so their brand has not necessarily helped them navigate that shift. And so what does that mean for them in terms of a rebrand? And what are they going to give up if they try to be something that they're really not? So it's a really complicated sort of space, just to give a quick answer to. I'm sorry if it feels like I'm dodging it.
Not at all. Okay, we have a couple of questions that have been posed related to marketing for smaller businesses. This one from Colleen. Many organizations need to prioritize based upon their budget. In your experience, where is the most important place to expend resources if your budget does not allow for the full scope of all presented?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that I would map that customer journey, and I would try to figure out where am I going to get the most bang for my buck in the customer journey. So is the problem that I don't have enough people coming in the funnel, given the conversion that I have? Or is the problem that I don't have a high enough conversion? Or is the problem that maybe Skander's out giving presentation after presentation after presentation, but he's not converting to sales. Everybody's inspired, but nobody's actually signing a contract. So I think I would try to identify what is going to prime the pump the best along that journey. And if it's a problem with people coming into the funnel, I'd really start with some earned media and some SEO and some content marketing. But if the problem is really more along the lines of getting that conversion, I would need to do some research and find out what is the barrier in the conversion, and make sure that I'm always operating at the root cause and not the symptom of the problem. Does that help, Colleen? It's probably consistent with what you maybe expected to hear.
No, that was perfect. Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, so nice to see you. I miss all my peeps.
Do we? So related to our inability to see each other, Jackie, we're in this unique pandemic time. Are there ways that you have seen the pandemic impact marketing and the advice that you might give to us all? And also what are some trends that you see going into 2021 in the marketing space?
Yeah. So when the summer rolled around, one of my friends, Chris Wright, a former student of mine, works at Google. So he's the Google Cloud Brand Manager, which is how I know kind of a little of what's going on there. And he sent me this ad clip at the start of the pandemic that was just a whole bunch of like 5 minutes of ads all run together that said, unprecedented times, and we're here for you. And everybody was saying the same thing. And his big joke was, nobody was standing out because everybody was, a caring, empathetic sort of provider during these unprecedented times. And so I think the pandemic has really helped us highlight how important connection is with people, and that authentic connection comes in really different ways. And so right now, the direct-to-consumer space is just exploding, and it's highlighting the importance, I think, of understanding, depending on what you're selling, how can you make it more convenient for people to access, and how can you really make sure that when you make it your product service convenient for people to access, does it really take away a pain point? What is the pain point that you're going to take away in their life? And so I think linking it to, not being cliche about these unprecedented times, but really understanding the role that your product or service plays and how it can alleviate the stress that people are feeling is really important. I think moving forward, I haven't even been asked this question and I haven't read anything about it, but the key thing that I would say is some sense of shared celebration of having gone through this together. I mean, really, I'm not homeschooling kids. I haven't lost my job. So I feel like I've been really lucky. And at the same time, I've missed connection. And so I feel like some sense of celebration is really important, however that celebration looks. So moving into 2021, I think everybody's hopeful about a vaccine, but I think we have to be careful. I think it's going to take way longer for us to move out of this than the promise of a vaccine might indicate. So, being patient on the one hand, and also anticipating a time when we can celebrate the fact that we've all made it through this. And what do we want to keep in our lives that we learned about ourselves that has actually made us stronger and better because we went through this together? I mean, to me, it's a time for reflection, and companies should lead in that reflection.
Well said. Thank you so much, Jakki, for your time and sharing your knowledge today. I want to remind everyone that today's presentation, the recording, and the resource materials that Jakki has mentioned, and her email address, her contact information, will be shared to everyone who registered, and we'll also post the video on our website. So if you want to rewatch it or share it with others in your team, you can do so. And we are also going to include in that follow-up opportunity if you would be interested in subsequent webinars to drill down deeper into some of these strategic marketing tactics. So thank you again for joining us, and everyone have a great evening.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to see some of the names that I recognize, and I look forward to a time when I can see you all in person.